Welcome to Lumenaries, the podcast, where we shed light on the stories of remarkable individuals shaping our world. I'm Christopher Bolton, your host on this journey through the realms of creativity and achievement. Today, we are thrilled to host David S. Perkins, a luminary in lighting and production, visualization, and digital rehearsal. David has had an incredible journey and is not done yet. He's the architect behind Carbon for Unreal Engine and has recently released Carbon, the standalone version of the pioneering software. Join us as he gives us a glimpse behind the curtain. Let's shine a light on the true luminary together as we explore the remarkable journey of David S. Perkins. This is Lumenaries, the podcast, where the spotlight is on learning. David S. Perkins, welcome to the show. So nice to have you. Thank you for freeing up some time to discuss this with me. Tell me a bit about yourself and let our listeners know how you got into this crazy game.
Oh God, how did I get into this? like the rest of us mad people did. I started actually in high school. I was a young lad of 15, and I showed up on stage wanting to be an actor. I knew how to sing. Our whole family are musicians, and auditioned for some roles and got in for some of them, and some of them didn't. And finally got around to one of those plays where I didn't get any of the roles that I wanted, and they said, "Oh well, you could help out backstage, and you can help us build sets and hang lights and all this kind of stuff." And I'm like, "Oh, okay, that sounds cool. Let's try that out." And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with it so much that I actually started skipping high school to go work in the theater during the mornings. I would actually like wake up a little bit late and then walk myself to school. And I knew that the theater was the easiest building to sneak into. And there was always something going on. Somebody was building something, somebody was hanging lights, prepping for a dance show, or, who knows what. So yeah, I fell in love with like live theater and the imminence of putting on a production together with a company. Expanded further into community theater, did some design work for some community theater in Orlando, which is where I grew up. But I was also interested in computer graphics. And that was a weird thing where I thought that this computer graphics thing had absolutely nothing to do with live events. I was
Not
like,
at the time.
there weren't media servers. At least I wasn't aware of media servers then. There was probably like projectors and stuff like that for probably operas and stuff like that. But media and that digital media divergence that happened with, shall we say, some of the early high-end servers that we're all familiar with, that wasn't really a thing. So I just fell in love with also playing with cracked versions of 3D software that some friends of mine at high school were giving me. They're like, "Hey, there's this piece of software. It's $16,000. I have no idea what it does. Like, can you figure out what it does?" And I think
Let me guess, 3ds Max.
3ds Max. Yeah, 3ds Max. That was probably, I think the first one I learned was Lightwave, but I hated it. So 3ds Max, I wrapped my head around, and I was able to figure that out. And then when I graduated high school, which I did with a GED, mind you, when I graduated, I wanted to go to school for visual effects. I watched The Matrix. John Gaeta did a spectacular job of providing the visual effects for that film. Such a pioneer. And I knew at that point that, I needed to do something that fueled both of these. So yeah, it was really just this idea of converging that love of live theater and live events with that rendering software that started my career towards the path that it is now.
So did you go and do any formal training, or did you just work your way up and learn on the job?
No formal training. I would say I have a gift for learning new pieces of software, just picking them up and taking them apart and trying them out. Maybe not so much on the coding side of things. That's one of the elusive pieces of software that, I can write like software headers and stuff like that, but I can't really write code.
But you know what you want, right?
I do. Yeah. At least I do now. I don't know. It changes every week.
So when did you decide to focus entirely on the digital rehearsal space?
Okay, so glad you used that term. It tells me that either something's catching on or the brainwashing is working. Um, so there's a number of industries that use this term previs, and I never really liked it. I never really liked the word previs. It's first of all, it's short for pre-visualization, but it doesn't really say what it is because if you see it in your mind's eye, that is a form of pre-visualization, but nobody else can see that, right? That you are pre it's before it's pre you know. So I started toying around with some words because I saw that the film market was using the word previs. TVs were using previs. Everybody was using previs. There's a gentleman who made a piece of software called previs.co. And so he coined that, and I was like, well, it doesn't really work the way that I wanted to. It doesn't describe the benefit, right? If you're talking to an account rep at an ad agency or an experiential company or concert, production company, what I really wanted to do was try to come up with a term that works for me that describes the point in time at which previs takes place. Okay. And for me, it's akin to like the way that dancers go into a dancer rehearsal studio and they work out their choreography and they practice, they call that choreography, right? They have a space for that. But the technical uh, professionals in our industry didn't really have a space. And so I wanted to think about, well, how do we create that space? And so I thought, well, for them, they're just rehearsing. They're doing a digital rehearsal. Now, before they do a digital rehearsal, maybe there's some, console homework, prep work, kind of that housework type stuff that needs to happen on the desk before you begin the programming or rehearsal. But you are in effect rehearsing your work and making adjustments as you learn how the rehearsal runs. So that's what I started to use internally in our services, and I'm hoping it sticks. When did I focus on that? My focus of digital rehearsal started when I moved from Silent House Productions. I was one of the early members of that team. When I moved from Silent House to VER, there was a woman by the name of Susan Tesh, which I hope your listeners know. She's an incredible woman, and I owe so much of my career to her. I would say that my direction towards digital rehearsal really solidified when I took the role at VER. And my job there was to figure out how to do previs. Okay, the word previs was completely foreign to me at that point in time. I think maybe there was one time at Silent House where we rolled a previs station into the suite. I think Steve Richards was programming Lady Antebellum or something like that. It was pretty cool to watch, but I didn't really understand what it was for. Um, but when I went to work for VER, the challenge was put to me to learn a new way of doing things that people could see rendering in real time. And it boiled all the things that I was interested in, all the real time rendering, the live events, it boiled it all together. And Susan laid it on me and said, this is yours to own, take it and run with it. And that was exciting that, she believed in me that much to let me take charge of it. But I started all that research, I think it was around, I think 2013 or 2014 would be my guess.
Awesome. Awesome. So, I mean, what a wonderful opportunity. So, obviously, being exposed to all of this, you got given some fantastic opportunities to work with some amazing people. Why don't you name drop a little for us? What shows have you worked on?
So I've been thinking a little bit about that question as it gets asked me from time to time. I'm gonna rebel against it slightly. Okay. The first of which is I'm not going to I'm not going to specifically state productions that I work on because the point of what I do is actually in service of other people. Okay, so the point of previs or digital rehearsals or whatever term you'd like to use for it, to me, it's all about serving a production in a very binary and neutral way. I have no responsibility for the creative direction of the production. The way it comes out is purely at the hands of the people that I'm serving. And so it actually works best for me, both in my services and in the vision that I'm taking for the company with Carbon, is that it's not about me or any one production. It's about the people that use it. And so I don't like to share a lot about specific productions, but there are some shows that I'm blessed to work with on a pretty frequent basis that are kind of like my annual I don't know if you'd call them a homecoming or we actually have a term for it in at iHeartRadio Music Festival. We call the space Brigadoon. And
Brigadoon. I
Brigadoon,
like
yes,
that.
it's a name for our space when we all come together. It's based on the play. We have a suite at iHeartRadio Music Festival every year, and what I love about that festival is it's never one artist. It's like 15
Yeah.
A-list artists every single time, and we never know what we're gonna get in terms of what the camps are gonna be like. What the advancing prep is going to be like, how well prepared people are going to be, how much control they want versus how much they want to hand off to an amazing pool of programmers that we have for that show. So that to me is it's what I mark my calendar year with. It's the one show that I say, we've reached another year. It's another setting of the sun. So that's a show that I look very fondly on. And then there's one other one that I'm going to mention, not for name drop's sake, but because it embodies a sense of collaboration that I so love to see. And that is Beyonce's performance at Coachella. The reason that that performance is so striking to me is because of how much preparation went into something that I don't think made her a lick of money. She was contracted, if I remember correctly, she was contracted to perform at Coachella the year prior, but she had just given birth. And so she had to cancel. And so in essence, I imagine just, uh, in my imagination, I put the pieces together that she wanted to put on a good show and give the people what they want. And by God, she did. She hired an entire marching band worth of people, some like 40
I remember that
dancers.
performance.
It's huge. And it was 2 nights. Okay. But the amount of preparation that went into that single event and the number of people involved and the kind of collaboration, and mind you, Beyonce's a superstar. I mean, she's larger than life. The idea for her in the sound stage, she listened to the riffs and the bumps and the jams that were happening within the band, and she would notice things. She's like, "Hey, that thing that you're doing, that's cool. Why don't we all do that?" Or she was the amount of energy was just it was palpable. It was absolutely palpable.
So, David, share with us when you decided to get into Unreal Engine.
When did I decide to get an Unreal Engine? Well, the funny thing is that I actually tried something else first. I tried something called CryEngine. Anybody heard of CryEngine?
CryEngine.
CryEngine, yeah,
Is
man.
it?
There's this game called Crisis,
Oh, yes.
CRYSIS.
Okay.
And there used to be this joke that you'd have the best computer in the world. It was super fast, but can it run Crisis? That was always the joke. Crisis was the first engine that I saw. A gentleman by the name of Chris Nyfield, one of the early founding members of Silent House, he tipped me on to CryEngine. He showed me some early tests of some stuff that he had done with it, and it showed some volumetric lights. Pardon me. He'd done some early tests with volumetric lights, and you could see the beams and breakup patterns and stuff like that. And we're like, this is kind of the direction things are going. There is a future here. We're looking at this amazing game quality and all these games that we're playing. I mean, I love playing games. We were looking at all this great quality, and we were trying to achieve the speed and the ability to design recursively and iteratively in a fast way. And we were waiting for Maya to render 15-minute frames. I mean, we were
Oh
using
my
our
word. I know what you mean, man. The rendering
okay.
used to kill me.
So the idea that Chris shared with me that I feel like I grabbed the torch and continue to carry with, and I'm sure he's a huge proponent of as well, and maybe he's working on something too. Who knows? Um, the idea is let's get to that 95 to 99% quality mark of what the unbiased Monte Carlo path trace rendering can be in Maya with something like Arnold or Mental Ray or whatever renderer you want to use. Let's get to that 95% mark at 60 FPS. Is that possible?
Yeah.
And I think it is. And it's actually well within our grasp. There's just a lot of work to do. So but Unreal itself, it actually started with a video I saw, I want to say in about 2012, 2013, something like that. I'm going to have to go back and check my records on that. So please fact check me on that. There was a video that Unreal posted with a global illumination system called Enlighten. Um, Not exactly sure how it's spelled, but it was a method where they could calculate the amount of light off of an emissive object as it moved throughout the scene, and it got into the corners of the room, and it was like, I think we're getting there. We're getting really close. And it intrigued me enough that I did start to download Unreal Engine to play with just on the side to see if I could get something to work out of it.
What version was that? Do you remember?
I don't know, but it was easily below 4.10 would be my guess. I would say, yeah, somewhere below that range. But I think full time, like, okay, I think there's something here, was actually when I moved back to Orlando, actually shortly after that Coachella project that I mentioned. Um, I moved back to Orlando to start my family. So my wife and I had twin boys, and we decided that Orlando was a better place for us financially to raise a family, nothing more, just financially. And so when I moved, I decided to create my company, Imaginary Lights. That company was, just a digital rehearsal company, but I knew that I didn't like the tools that I had available to me. I knew that there had to be something better. And so one of the first things that I did when I moved to Orlando was set up a place to work, and happened to be that I found a really great place to work out of a game development co-working space. I
Awesome.
mean, can you get much better than that? It was such a cool place to work out of. I mean, it probably failed every safety inspection you could imagine, from a fire code standpoint. I think there was somebody even living there. It was a gnarly place, but some absolutely creative individuals, and we were able to run our very first tests using Unreal Engine in, I think it was 2018, is when we really started that first test into Unreal Engine. And we got ArtNet connectivity set up. We wrote our own module for that, so we can get literally 0 to 255 doing a thing. That's all we needed to do, 0 to 255. I mean, that's all DMX is, folks. So having that drive dynamic behavior inside of Unreal was one of the most satisfying things that we did.
So this is before the vanilla plugin.
Yes, sir. Well, it's let's say it's before our knowledge of it.
Okay.
Um, it may have been in development. I imagine Lux Machina probably was the first group to ask for DMX inside of Unreal. That would be my guess. I didn't even know what virtual production was, or I didn't even think it was a thing. Like people were talking, oh yeah, you can hook up Disguise and Unreal, and you can make a background image move on an LED volume. And I'm thinking,
What?
why? Like I'm like, no, don't you want to like go from Disguise as a media server playing back its media, sending all the video feeds, and then we take that into Unreal Engine and let's visualize the whole shebang, right? I didn't understand it, but I did watch it at SIGGRAPH. Again, can't remember the year, but I did watch a demo, and the folks from All of It Now were there. Disguise was there, and they were showing off this demo of in-camera VFX, and it clicked. I still didn't think it was the right thing for us from a focus standpoint, but I thought it was cool. But to answer your question, we did not know that Unreal Engine was going to be developing a DMX plugin with fixtures and examples. Did not know that they were going to be doing that. We saw a huge opportunity, probably just as they did, and so we decided that we were going to own our piece of it.
So at what stage did you decide, you know what, let's do this. Let's make a plugin.
It was probably the beginning of the pandemic.
Okay.
It was, yeah. So we applied for a mega grant before the pandemic to see if we could, get some funding to help with the effort, and see if we could develop an in-house visualization system. My original vision was that it would be a service offering of Imaginary Lights, which is my services company. Um, Originally, I thought that it would be best that we would be the gatekeepers of that and offer it as an expanded service. Little did I know that there's absolutely zero way to expand service, right? There's no way I can be in all these different places at one time. So
Yeah, you're only one person.
exactly. And I managed to find some really great people to join, and I train them in some of the methodologies and the reasons that we do what we do. But it wasn't until the pandemic hit and I started to see some virtual productions. I think Tomorrowland was probably the first one. And I saw what they were doing. And I'm like, oh, there must be a market here, especially if this pandemic is going to be, as long as, we envisioned it was going to be. I mean, good Lord, that was a dark time. But some innovation really came out of that. And I will say our industry definitely needed to see some of that innovation. And it was exciting to see it come from such a crucible, the idea that we're just trying to figure out a way to work, right? And so we developed our own version of a DMX plugin with a library, because one of the things that we saw that was missing in what Epic had to offer with their offering is a library. We saw, a number of people making some tutorials on how to make a fixture, but it looked to us like it would be quite a time-consuming effort, and it would require everyone who wanted this quality that you could achieve inside of Unreal Engine. It would require that every single person become a developer. And I just don't think that that's the right thing, given how hard it has been for me to learn Unreal Engine, that our industry would be able to adopt that in a broad sense. So we thought, okay, why don't we give them a shortcut? Why don't we provide this toolkit that has, a vetted library? It has a workflow for moving things, a workflow for moving things in and out of Vectorworks very quickly. That's, an application that we use daily. How can we make this, pardon me, how can we make this as efficient as possible so people can move the data as they need? And so we kind of turned ourselves into the premium offering, because the Unreal Engine plugin is completely free. And I would encourage anyone who's never even played with it, please play with it. We actually do encourage people to get their hands in it and get a better understanding.
Well, that's where I started during the pandemic. I saw that it was now possible to use DMX within Unreal Engine, and then I also downloaded it. And I think it was 4.26. I think it was the first version.
4.25, 4.26 is when it started to firm up as a solid thing. I think there was a blueprint
Yeah.
implementation of the plugin in like 423 or 424. But anyway, that's just technical gook at this point. The idea is we acknowledge that there's a place for both of us to exist in the marketplace. The best place for the built-in DMX plugin right now is in virtual production for like sky panels or image sampling, an HDRI environment and sending DMX to a light in the real world, which then keys a person, just so that it kind of glues that world together. So that tie-in makes a lot of sense, but the onus is very much on each individual Unreal, developer to make their own fixtures. And it's not easy. And we've also uncovered that there's only a certain amount of capability you can build into the base fixture class before you start to run into walls. For example, you can't do more than one gobo layered over top of each other unless you build your own custom shader. You can't do framing shutters. You can't do prisms. There's a number of functionality that just isn't there. And I don't think Epic really wants to build a full library. They want to inspire people. It's almost like what they built, if they had built it before we even started, we absolutely would have used ground floor as the start of the Carbon library. We just didn't know that it existed. When we were evaluating the pros and cons of keeping our original core or theirs, we felt that ours was more open, where theirs was more rigid to building a fixture in a particular way, which, as we've learned with the various different manufacturers, the way that they tie channel sets together, and sometimes they're independent, sometimes they're together, uh, there wasn't the flexibility that we really wanted in the built-in DMX core that's available for Unreal.
So being part of your team, I realize you like to surround yourself with bright minds. So how did you initially establish your team?
Luck. I think luck is the only thing I have to attribute to because I don't deserve the team I have, frankly. There's nothing I've done that says, I grew this team out of the ashes or anything like that. I've been very lucky to find a few folks who, I scoured the corners of the internet. I mean, that's for sure. I found a number of people with these little pet projects that were related to DMX. There's some folks that, built their own little demos and things like that. It's kind of like a band of misfits, to be honest. We complete each other. We're all on the spectrum at some degree, I'm quite sure. That's there's something going on there. But it started in a very bootstrappy way. I guess the one thing that I would say is we use this term, and I don't use it in a joking way. We try to get less ghetto every day. That's a term that we use. And the reason I say, yeah, but it's got connotations to all kinds of dark history, and so I try to only use that internally. So I guess it's out now. That's our catchphrase inside. Um, the idea is this: we're all becoming better people. We're all learning our skills, but at the end of the day, I think our desire to work together as a team and our desire, that's the thing that you can't train. You cannot train someone how to be a good person. You can't train someone how to care about something. And what I can say is my team cares so goddamn
That's true.
much.
That's true. How long did it take for you to feel like, wow, I'm actually really onto something here, and I know that you've just recently released the standalone version, but I would like to know, going back, like when you first really started making a product that just looked amazing, when did you go, wow, this is cool?
Oh, that's a hard question, Christopher. I don't know if I still know that answer. It's the reason I don't know that answer is because the challenge is immense. Every time I think that we've got something cool, I realize that what we've built has a bigger implication, and that's scary and exciting all at the same time. So let's start by going through the milestones. Okay. Uh, we get DMX connectivity to work inside of Unreal. Yay, cool. That's awesome. Okay. What does this open the door to? Oh, this opens the door to virtual production. Okay, well, Tomorrowland had 2,000 some odd lights. Okay, now the challenge is, can we figure out how to get 2,000 lights in Unreal with DMX working at 60 frames per second? Okay, that's still a big hurdle. We're still fighting, but it's a hurdle that we're not far from. Okay, then what? So we get to these hilltops, and then we have a chance to see in the distance, and then we're like, oh crap, this is going to change X, Y, and Z. So I would say that as we got close to building the standalone, we did happen upon a feature that we developed that I had a feeling was going to be a good decision. It is going to pay off. I know it will. And it is going to change the way that we collaborate. When I saw that feature work in real time, oh my God, that to me was, it was the moment that I said, holy shit, this is not just previs anymore. So for your listeners, I want to be very, very careful here. I do not want to promise any particular roadmaps, targets, deadlines, release dates, anything like that. But there is something coming with Carbon that we're very, very excited about. We just want it to be absolutely right because the promise is so huge that it can change things. Um, so please stay tuned. I'll share more as we get closer. The last thing that I want to do is build you guys up and then have it absolutely fall on its face because we can't scale it correctly. That's our biggest thing. We want this to be for everyone. So having seen that feature and then getting the validation that we got, so we did show it off in a prototypey fashion at LDI this last year, and the consensus was pretty clear that we're onto something.
Amazing. So obviously none of this developing malarkey that you're into comes cheap. Is there anyone in particular you'd like to shout out? I know that you have many supporters and many guys who have supported the cause, but is there anyone in particular you'd like to mention?
Well, I have to be careful there. So we do have a group of investors that have helped us. I would consider them friends and family. Okay. Now, they are not my friends and family, but in this industry, I do consider them my friends and family. And they're friends and family in that um, they have backed this from the very, very beginning of the ideas, even before we had an idea of a standalone, even before we had even proof, just this dream. There are a number of people who have believed and have either vested financially or have continued to push me through this. Okay, there are zero people who have ever suggested that I give up or that I will fail. Everyone this entire time has been pushing, saying, do this, do this, do this. This is what you need to do. And thank you. And so in return, that's an obligation to me. When somebody puts that much faith in you and is putting their hard-earned dollars in many situations, when they put that faith in me, that's an obligation for me to do right by this.
That's amazing. And sometimes you need that more than the money. Hey, you need people to believe in you.
Oh, the money helps. Oh, the money helps. The
Definitely.
money helps a lot. because
Oh,
unfortunately, I've not really paid myself much to this endeavor, but my team, I make sure that they're taken care of first and foremost, and they don't eat faith.
no, sure. Sure. So obviously having worked with you guys for a while now and having been part of the support team, uh, most of the questions that we got on the support side of things was based because people didn't necessarily have the knowledge they needed in Unreal Engine itself. Was that the main reason that you took the plunge into starting the process around the standalone, or were there other reasons as well?
Twofold. Yeah, it's twofold. That was kind of the canary in the coal mine, right? That burden of support and the amount of effort it would take to educate our industry in things like collision meshes and you know I mean that's probably one of our biggest support questions. Yeah, collision meshes, that's one of our biggest support questions. We found that yes, there was definitely a bit of monotony around the support, but we realized that the burden of support was stifling our ability to develop because we were having to put so much resources into maintaining a user base with very challenging issues. I mean, these are not easy things to work through. And we've always taken the approach with support first and foremost from an empathetic standpoint. We realize it's hard because we use it. We get it. But when you pair that with a user base of people who it's not growing to the size that we think it's going to need to be to impact our industry the way that we want to impact it, you got to make a change somewhere. And the biggest way that we could adjust our market is packaging. Okay, it's all about the user experience, and thankfully, here's Unreal Engine. It is a game development platform, and we built within it. What better way to take that and package and then actually turn it into kind of like a game? Now, it can be a serious game. You can have a tool panel and widgets and make it look like a real application. But at the end of the day, Unreal Engine is packaging a game. I mean, they do that with Twinmotion, for example. That's another product built off of Unreal Engine for the architectural community. And we saw a huge success of what happens when you take something that's potentially challenging, like Unreal Engine, and deliver it to people in a bite-sized, easy-to-use way that, you don't need a manual. You can just pick it up, open it up right away, and just get to work. Like that was one of the things that I loved about Arnold when I first started using Arnold as a rendering engine for Maya. Nyfield and I would just say all the time, geez, it just fucking works. It just works. It just works. And I think that approach, if we just kind of embody that and put that into the way that we design this product, I think it'll be great if folks understand that this is our intent, is that you don't need a manual. Don't overthink it. Just play with it because at the end of the day, I feel like design is play.
So I know you've got to compare apples with apples, and we don't like to compare ourselves or the software with anything else that's in, but there is a lot of competition in this market space. If you were a young designer, why would you invest in your journey?
Oh, surely.
If I was a young designer and you had to convince me to invest in your journey, what would you say to me?
Well, I would say it's because it's the future. I mean, frankly, the way that I see it, nobody wants to go back and forth between programs.
No,
Okay.
definitely
The,
not.
the, if you're if you're saying the word invest, somebody taking the time, okay, I'm going to learn a completely new way of doing things. Um, if somebody is doing real-time graphics right now, would you suggest they learn Unreal Engine or After Effects? If they've never learned either program right now, probably you would suggest that they learn Unreal Engine because the speed at which you can iterate, and they've got all new motion graphics tool sets and stuff like that in there. Unreal Engine is inescapably part of our future. Whether or not we're ready for it, there is a whole swath of vision that is being put together around Fortnite that may or may not be nefarious. I don't think it is. Um, There is a virtual world on the horizon that a lot of people are running towards, and Unreal Engine is at the center of it. So one thing to note, the way that we've approached our development is we take ownership of the things that are our subject matter expertise. Okay. We don't focus on things like the render code itself. Why? Because it's render code. There's thousands of scientists figuring out how to do this stuff. Why don't we leverage and benefit from that technology, right? Why do we need to reinvent the wheel? We're not smarter than them. There's no way. But we do know how our tool set could utilize that. So that's our domain, right? So I like the separation of concerns that Unreal Engine affords us. And that, therefore, is the big ocean that our product rides on top of. So I would say, if nothing else, if you don't look into our story or anything about why we're even building this, just look at rendering power alone and what a DMX solution based on that rendering power could do over the eventual future. Start with that. And then you start to look at, in my view, some of the things that make us distinctive. The first of which is, as far as I know, we are born from within the industry. We've worked the job. We've been in the role of the people we're trying to sell to. Okay. So we have a direct connection and we understand what it is that they're trying to do. That kind of connection to our customers is reflected in our customer experience, in the way that we support our people. I think that that's an inherent when you look at like our support tickets and our forums and stuff like that. The general consensus is you can tell that we care.
Okay, so second to last question, then I'm going to let you go. I know you don't like to talk roadmap, but I'm going to push you on this a little for our listeners. How do you see the next few steps unfolding?
So the next few steps are a little up in the air because I change my mind on a week by week basis as far as which feature gets done in the right order of operations. Because one of the things about development that you might learn, and I've become incredibly sympathetic of folks that develop software. I will say that's one of the biggest learning lessons. You don't see me griping about other people's software bugs anymore because I
get it, yeah.
get it. They know they need to fix them. Now, they still need the pressure from other people, but it's just not going to come from me. Okay. What I've acknowledged is that you have to build on a really good foundation. And so in order to build a good foundation, you have to build the right thing in the right order. And so one of the things that we're doing right now, not very sexy, we are doing probably our 12th version of our fixture foundation, because in version 11, we found something wrong with our fixture foundation, a big hole that says, you know what, we missed something, and we should probably fix this before we build an entire visualizer, an entire design application on this faulty foundation. But in the very, very near future, we'll have FBX importing. So that's coming in the very near future with our standalone version of Carbon, as well as material editing and environment editing. So those are the next kind of key things that kind of get bundled in one concept together. We hope to have that out in the next couple of weeks.
That's fantastic. So this is your chance to punt. Share some details. How can our listeners get stuck into your software?
Carbon.show.
Simple as that.
Carbon.show. It was one of those domains that I was able to snag at exactly the right time. I saw the whole .show domain. I'm like, you know what? That actually
it works really well.
Kind of works for what we're trying to do here. It works for what we're trying to do. So yeah, Carbon.show.
David, fantastic having you on the show. Thank you so much for sharing your time with me, and also for our listeners. We are super excited to see how this turns out in the future.
Thank you so much.